folks. It's Pete from NorthAmericaByRail.info. It's Friday, October the 3rd, 2025, and we are about to start on another epic train journey, this time on Via Rail's Ocean, from Halifax to Montreal. So it's approximately 11 a.m. and we have arrived here at Halifax Union Station. It turns out the departure of our 11:30 a.m. train, the Ocean to Montreal, has been delayed until 1:30 p.m. As I would later find out from a crew attendant, the problem was due to a defective sander on one of the locomotives. Four cars down.
We're at Manami, Shino. We got your bag in the ticket office, the Rail ticket office. Is there a passenger named Willick? You also have your bag in the Halifax ticket office. You can come pick that up. Name Willick. Your suitcase at the Rail ticket counter.
Car 41? Your car 41. Excellent. Thank you.
Nice city.
Yeah.
Coordinator's job is to teach you stuff, learning stuff. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about the train. If you have any information that you can give to me, I appreciate it. So I'm always open for suggestions and add-ons. Most of my presentations will be happening in the service car where the red seats are. There will be tomorrow afternoon a wine tasting that will happen in here. A little bit of information about the ocean train. It had its first run from Montreal to Halifax on July 4th, 1904. So we just celebrated 121 years of... I just got started if you want to join us. I'm gonna go grab you some glasses. So the distance between Halifax and Montreal or vice versa is 1,346 kilometers. If you go in miles, 826 miles. We have 27 stops total. There are some stops where nobody is scheduled to get on or off. So when that happens, the engineers will slow down. If somebody is standing on the platform, they will ask, are you traveling with us today? If the person says yes, we'll pull up, we'll get them on board, and we'll continue on our journey. Most of the time, it's people taking pictures or videos. You're gonna see tripods all along the route. People love taking pictures and videos of the train. So if they say, no, we're just taking videos, we continue on our route. So 27 stops total. CN, Canadian National, is the freight trains. They own the tracks. So there are some times that we have to sit still and let the freight trains go by because they have priority. So that could be one of the things that could delay us throughout the night or tomorrow throughout the day. So today on the ocean equipment, we have two different types of equipment. The car that we're sitting in right now is a Renaissance economy coach car. So all of our Renaissance cars have the outside shell a greenish color, like my scarf here. The inside of the cars are all bluish, as well as the sleepers. So if you're in sleeper 30, 37, 38, 39, you would be in a Renaissance sleeper. We also have HEP equipment. So the HEP equipment would be stainless steel on the outside. The inside is all refurbished and it's a brown leather upholstery that's on there. The HEP equipment was built in the 1950s. They've all been refurbished. They've all been insulated to sustain winter conditions. The Renaissance equipment was built for the Channel in England. Whoever had started this project went bankrupt. So Canada purchased the already started equipment, finished building them, and we've been running them. 10 years ago when I started working at Via Rail, we would just run either Renaissance or HEP. It was one full Renaissance train or one full HEP train. The HEP train would only come at Christmas time and we would call that the special train. Throughout the years, there are some parts that haven't been able to be replaced because, again, it was built for England or for the US in the 1950s or in the 1980s. So the parts are not being built anymore. So they had to decommission some of the cars, and in order to make two full sets of trains, one for each direction, we had to combine the two types of equipment. So I'm gonna start at the front of the train and I'm gonna make my way back here and I'm gonna explain the different types of equipment that you're gonna see along the route. I highly suggest if you're in the Renaissance cars to go up to the HEP equipment. Car 40, 41 is the HEP equipment sleepers. If you're in 4041, I suggest you come back here and visit the Renaissance cars, just to see the different types because it's completely different, the sleeping accommodations. It's pretty neat. So all the way at the front today, we have 3 engines. The engines were built in the early 1980s by GM. They run approximately 3,000 horsepower, 16 cylinders, and can reach up to a speed of 153 kilometers an hour. I've never seen them go 153. 147 was the highest I've ever seen. I tend to feel like they go faster in the Quebec region, and I think the reason is because the tracks are in better condition than throughout New Brunswick. So those would be the 3 engines. Following the engines, we have the baggage car. The engineer's job is to take care of the luggage. So if you have registered luggage, it would be right behind the engines. Following the engines, following the baggage car, we have 3 HEP sleepers. So 4041 is for passengers. The 3rd one is for us crew. Some of us will be sleeping in there tonight. The HEP sleepers all have a communal washroom. They all have a communal shower. And they have 3 different types of sleeping accommodations. So you have the berths, the roomettes, and the actual bedrooms. So we'll start with the berths. We have 3 lower, 3 upper. It's about the width of this. So when you walk in there, you're gonna see 2 benches similar to this. We remove the table. The 2 couches go in like this. We put a mattress on top. We make the bed. We close the curtains. Those are your accommodations for the night. The upper berth is very similar. However, it's up top. When you go into an airplane and they put the luggage and they clamp, it looks exactly like that. But when we pull it down, there's a mattress in there. So we make up the bed with a nice white sheet. We close the curtains. We give you a ladder. Those would be your accommodations if you're in an upper berth. So then we go into the roomettes. So we've got 4 lower, 4 upper. So the roomettes are single person accommodations. You can't fit 2 people in there. It's very small. It's about the width of this. So you go in, you sit on your little bench. Right in front of you here is the toilet bowl. Luckily there's a cover, so you don't have to watch that stuff.
Yeah.
In front of you there's a big mirror. Underneath the mirror is your bed. So the bed pulls out over top of the toilet, over top of the bench. The door closes, it latches, and that would be a lower roomette. Upper roomette is very similar, except the bed is not underneath the mirror. It's behind you like a Murphy bed. So we clamp, comes down on top of the sofa, on top of the toilet. The door closes, it latches, and that would be an upper roomette. And that's why the communal washroom comes in handy. You don't have to put your bed away. You can go use the communal washroom. Then we've got 4 actual bedrooms, A, B, C, D. They all have individual bathrooms. They all have the double bunk beds. Room A has a fold-out couch, so now we can accommodate a family of 3 in room A. B is the standard 2 bunk beds. C and D has a retractable wall. So now we can accommodate a family of 4. Or we can put the wall and have couples in C and a couple in D, like normal. So those would be your 3 types of sleeping accommodations in the HEP sleepers. So we have 3 of those. Following the 3 HEP sleepers, we've got 2 HEP coach economy cars. So it's double seats on each side. The space, and I heard you say this earlier and I loved it, the space for your leg is wider. And the fun part about those cars is right now everybody's sitting backwards except for us 4. In the HEP coach cars, we can turn the seats around. So everybody would be facing forward. These ones here, you can't move them. So that's the difference between the HEP coach and the Renaissance coach. Following the 2 HEP coaches, you're gonna find 1 big empty car. Along the walls, there are the flags of the provinces of the Maritimes, as well as Quebec, and the Acadian flag with a little description of each province. There's also a freezer, a closet, and a cage for our storage. The sole purpose for this car is so that we could connect the HEP equipment to the Renaissance equipment. So they've converted one car, the coupling, so we could attach. So we call it the transition car. We go from HEP to Renaissance and vice versa. Following the transition car, you're gonna find the exact same car as this. The only difference is this one has wheelchair accessible. There's a space right here for the wheelchair, as well as a huge washroom. So if we have passengers in economy that need wheelchair accessible, we use this car. It's very rare that we use it for that purpose, so they let me use it for alcohol presentations in here. When you serve alcohol on a moving vehicle, there needs to be a seat for every single person. So should I do this in the service car, right now I wouldn't be able to serve you some champagne because I only have 8 seats. So tomorrow, when we do the wine tasting, it'll be here. Everything else will be in the service car. So the economy Renaissance coach car is in service. You'll find some people in there. Following the exact same car as this, you're gonna find a service car. The service car has red seats. It has Wi-Fi. That one has a canteen accessible to everybody. Following the service car, you have the dining car. Most of you probably had dinner already there, right? Perfect. Breakfast tomorrow morning is first come, first serve. Starts at 6 Eastern time. Goes about till 8:39. They'll make an announcement 30 minutes before closing for breakfast. They'll say last call for breakfast. While you're having breakfast, somebody will come by and do reservations for lunch. So that's how it works for breakfast and lunch tomorrow. Following the dining car, you have another service car that is only accessible for sleeper passengers. It also has the red seats. It also has the Wi-Fi, and it has a coffee station. So coffee, tea, hot chocolate is free. If you go to the coffee station and it's empty because I'm back here talking, you can go to the other service car at the canteen and they'll provide these items for free as well. Water is provided by your attendant. At the canteen, they might ask you what car you're in or who your attendant is. That just tells us that you're actually in sleepers. Following the service car, we get into the Renaissance sleepers, so 30, 37, 38, 39. All the cars have 10 rooms except for car 30. They all have double bunk beds. They all have individual bathrooms. From 1 to 6 has showers. From 6 to 10, no showers. And you might notice car number 30 only has 9 rooms. And the reason for that is because we took room 9 and 10. We made it bigger for wheelchair accessible. So room 30, or car 30, room 9 is wheelchair accessible. It's huge. And then we have this car here, which is a economy coach car for wheelchair accessible, used by me for alcohol stuff. Behind us here is an empty baggage car, because when they return on Wednesday, they're going to take the engines from the front there and put them here. This is going to become the front of the train. That's it. That's the ocean.
That's it.
Any questions?
So this is our berth set up for daytime use. As you can see, there's 2 armchairs on either side of a big picture window. There's mirrors, reading lights, and coat hooks. And luggage can be stored underneath the seats. And I always like to ask our sleeping car attendant to install one of the portable tables that are available for sleeping car passengers traveling in berths. People that like to watch my train videos will know that I like to bring along my scanner, my Uniden scanner, which is programmed for all of the frequencies along the train's route. And that way I can hear the head-end crew, the onboard attendants, and the CN dispatchers. And I also like to bring along my Garmin as well, my GPS, so I can see exactly where the train is. One of the things that should be mentioned is that berths do not have 120 volt outlet like the bedrooms and roomettes do, so there's no outlets in the berths. So what I've done is I like to bring along a 20,000 milliamp hour charger pack to run my scanner and GPS, and that 20,000 milliamp hour battery pack will run my scanner and GPS both continuously for about 24 hours, which is long enough for this train route. I also have a 10,000 milliamp hour charger pack for my camera battery charger. As an alternative, you can also charge your camera batteries or cell phone in the washroom, as there is a 120 volt outlet in the communal washroom.
Mile 45, next up. No alarms. Temperature 21C. Total axle 76.
So what you heard on the scanner was the hotbox detector. And the hotbox detector is a trackside sensor that scans the wheels of the train for overheated bearings.
and you really have people busy, I can call for lunch anywhere. Thank you.
So it is now lunchtime on the ocean.
Okay, I'll have to see.
Here is local clam chowder.
I can have it dressing on the side.
For appetizers, we have a vegan salad with balsamic glaze and also a clam chowder. My main course was a dairy-free meal of chicken souvlaki, and there is also a corn and crab frittata or a chicken Caesar salad available. And for dessert, caramel cheesecake and a dairy-free Nanaimo bar. And that is lunchtime on the ocean.
Stop signal, departing home.
maritime on the ocean. Marsala pork chop. Dairy-free chicken and potatoes.
Sorry, yes.
And a vegan salad.
Cherry cheesecake.
And for dessert, cherry cheesecake and a dairy-free Nanaimo bar. So one of the perks that VIA provides its passengers is these handy route guides that describe the route, the ocean's route. And now I'm not going to go into great detail about the scenic points noted in this route guide, because we'll be seeing a lot of them from the train, and I'll be calling them out as our train traverses the Maritimes today. But to start off with, you can see it has information on the major cities like Halifax, Nova Scotia, Truro, Spring Hill Junction, Amherst, Sackville, Moncton, Rogersville, Miramichi, Bathurst, Maritimes, Roger, Jacquet River, New Brunswick, Charlotte, New Brunswick, Campbellton, New Brunswick, Matapedia, Amqui, Kasayabec, Montjoly, Rimouski, Trois-Pistoles, Rivière-du-Loup, La Pocatière, Montmagny, Sainte-Foy, Drummondville, St. Hyacinthe, St. Lambert, like Montreal. So one of the things I often get asked is, how much does this trip cost? So here I've included a screenshot of our reservation for this trip on the ocean. And as you can see, there's 2 adult fares, one for me, one for my wife. And the fares are broken down into 2 parts. The first line is the Berth discounted fare. That's the fare for the ocean train. And the second line is the economy fare, and that is the fare for the connecting train. So as you can see, the economy fare is $143.50, and the Berth discounted fare is $465.03, and that is for the actual ocean train, the sleeping car train. And that $465.03 includes the transit or transportation fare, and it also includes all your meals and your sleeping accommodation on board the train. And it is pretty good bang for your buck, considering if you had to rent a car and pay for hotels, gas, and food, it could easily cost you more money to do that than to take the train. And one last thing is a note about the Berth discounted fare. When we booked this trip, we booked it on a Tuesday. VIA has a promotion called Discount Tuesdays, where they offer discounted fares if you book the trip on a Tuesday. So that's what we've done here. So there you can see the price for the trip. And actually, one final thing is at the very bottom, you can see meal prepared with lactose-free ingredients. VIA Rail is very good at accommodating people with dietary needs. So if you have any food restrictions or allergies, you should make that known to VIA Rail at the time you book your trip, and they will prepare the meals in advance so you could have the correct meal for you on the train. And another thing about accommodations is VIA Rail is very accommodating to passengers with not just dietary needs, but also mobility needs. If you have a mobility impairment, you can make that known at the time of your booking, and they'll put in a service request to have red cap service, to have someone help you with a people mover to and from the train when you're at the station, and boarding assistance if that's what you need. So hopefully that sufficiently explains the fare structure and the cost of a trip on VIA Rail's ocean from Montreal to Halifax. So we've returned to our sleeping car, and our attendant has agreed to let me film how the berths are made up for nighttime use.
Thanks.
You're good? Oh, decaf. Regular cap.
So breakfast time on the ocean. This is my dairy-free meal. Bacon and egg breakfast sandwich and potatoes. watching my video on the ocean will notice that some of the still pictures that I've included in my video were taken from a car that is no longer in service on Via Rail's ocean, and that car is the park car, or the dome car, shown here on the tail end of the ocean in a picture that I've taken on a previous trip. Now, these cars are still used on other Via long distance trains, but they are no longer used on the ocean, and the reason for that has nothing to do with Via Rail's management, but actually has to do everything to do with decisions made by the host railroads that Via Rail operates on. In November of 2020, the old agreement between Via Rail and the Port of Halifax came to an end, and the Port of Halifax then informed Via Rail that after November, the space occupied by the turning track, where the train is turned around after arriving in Halifax, would be needed for another use. So in most cases, Via Rail does not own the track that its trains run on, but instead pays the host railroads for track access. And these host railroads can include such entities as Canadian National or the Port of Halifax. This then presented a problem for Via Rail, because as you can see from the pictures, the ocean would arrive in Halifax, locomotive first, and then it would be turned on the turning track so that the dome car at the tail end of the train was now where the locomotive was, and the locomotive would now be at the far end of the train, ready to depart Halifax, something that would no longer be possible without a turning track present. So as you can see from the pictures, the dome car used on the ocean had to be coupled to the tail end of the train because there is no vestibule for passengers to pass through at the tail end of the dome car. So that is the reason it had to be used at the tail end of the train. So now with the loss of the turning track, what Via Rail had to do was make the train bi-directional, and to do that, they placed a baggage car at each end of the train, including the end shown here where the park car used to be. So that precluded the use of the park car or the dome car, and that is why there is no more dome car on the train. So as you can see, it's not Via's fault there's no more dome car on the ocean, but rather an operational constraint forced upon Via by the host railroads. It's not an ideal solution, but at least it allows the train to keep running without the use of a turnaround track at Halifax. And as you can see from my video, it's still a great trip and one I would certainly recommend. Charny, Quebec, our train will leave the Drummondville subdivision main line and proceed onto the CN Bridge subdivision branch line over the St. Lawrence River to St. Foy, where there is a shuttle connection for passengers going to Quebec City. A point of fact is that the Quebec Bridge that our train crosses is the longest cantilever bridge in the world. This bridge collapsed twice during construction, killing 88 workers before finally being completed in 1917.
Of course, I'm getting the girders.
Yeah, so it will be right there. So, you're going to. No, that's okay because they get loaded on the shuttle for the train. So,
Wow, that's huge.
so the bags are just down there, and then the shuttle is over also.
Oh, it's
Okay. Bye-bye.
After stopping at St. Foy, the train will then reverse back over the bridge sub and onto the main line at Charny.
checker votre mégatrain d'Odyssey.
So my impression of this trip so far is it's been an amazing trip. The food was great, the onboard service was great, the scenery was great, and all in all, I highly recommend this trip. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we made it.
Arrived in Montreal and we're heading to the Panorama Lounge, which is Via Rail's first class lounge for sleeping car passengers.
afternoon, everyone, and welcome on train 67. My name is Steve, and I'll be your service manager for today. And out of consideration for passenger boarding at other stations, please occupy the seats and couch shown on your boarding pass. And for a more peaceful travel experience, please set your phone to vibrate and use a phone without electronic devices. All trains and station platforms are smoke-free environments. Station, la gare de Belleville. Berth Station, la gare de Coburg. One hour away from Toronto Station. Nous sommes toujours à 1 heure de la gare de Toronto. Thank you. Oshawa Station, la gare de Oshawa.
No? This video. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.